Hey, welcome back. I'm Ibnul J. Farabi, and this is Flashpoints, the wars that shaped us. You know, living in New York, you get used to the scale of things, the sheer number of people, but sometimes a historical fact stops you cold. Imagine if every single person in this city, over 8 million souls, were to die. Now imagine that happening 4 times over. That's a number approaching the population of modern-day Bangladesh, where I'm from. 30 million people. That's the staggering, almost incomprehensible death toll of a conflict that unfolded in 19th century China. A civil war so vast it dwarfed the Napoleonic Wars, so brutal it reshaped a continent. And yet, for many in the West, it remains the bloodiest civil war you've never heard of. This is the story of the Taiping Rebellion. Our story begins not on a battlefield, but in the mind of a man. His name was Xiuquan. He was a village teacher from southern China, a bright young man who repeatedly failed the grueling imperial civil service exams. The pressure of that failure, in a society where that exam was the only ladder to success, broke him. He fell into a feverish trance, and in that state, he had a vision. He was taken to heaven, he said, where a golden-bearded elder gave him a sword and a seal and told him to rid the world of demons. His younger brother in the vision, a man he called Jesus Christ, fought alongside him. When Hong recovered, he pieced it together. The elder was God. He, Xiuquan, was the second son of God, Jesus' younger brother, sent on a divine mission to overthrow the Qing Dynasty and establish a heavenly kingdom on earth. He called it the Taiping Tianghua, the heavenly kingdom of great peace. Now, this might sound like pure delusion, and on one level, it was, but it landed in a powder keg of social discontent. Southern China in the 1840s was a place of deep hardship. The Qing Dynasty, ruled by the ethnic Manchu minority, was seen as corrupt and weak, especially after losing the First Opium War to the British. Poverty was crushing, and here was Hong, preaching a radical new version of Christianity mixed with utopian ideals. He promised the abolition of private property, the equal distribution of land, the liberation of women. Foot binding was banned, and women could even serve as officials in his nascent movement. He promised to drive out the Manchu demons and restore a pure, Han Chinese kingdom ordained by God. To the desperate, the landless, the hungry, this wasn't madness. It was a revelation. It was hope, and they flocked to him by the hundreds of thousands. What started as a religious cult quickly militarized. They were the God-worshipping society, and by 1851, they were in open rebellion. They grew their hair long, rejecting the Manchu-ordered queue, and became known as the Longhairs. And they were shockingly successful. They marched north, a fervent, disciplined army fueled by apocalyptic belief. In 1853, they captured the major city of Nanjing, a former Ming Dynasty capital. They slaughtered the Manchu garrison and their families, and Hong declared Nanjing his heavenly capital. For over a decade, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom controlled a huge swath of southern China, home to tens of millions. They had their own currency, their own civil service exams based on Taiping theology, and their own ambitious social programs. On paper, it was a revolutionary utopia, but the reality inside the Heavenly Kingdom quickly darkened. Hong and his inner circle, the self-proclaimed kings, retreated into a world of paranoia and decadence. Hong himself spent years secluded in his palace, writing religious poetry and managing a harem. The strict separation of men and women, meant to uphold purity, tore families apart. The promised land reforms never materialized for most. The leadership turned on itself in a series of bloody purges. One of the most capable Taiping kings, the Eastern King, began claiming he could channel God too, that he was the Holy Ghost. Hong had him murdered, along with his family and thousands of his followers. The heavenly dream was rotting from the head down. The rebellion was no longer a cohesive revolution. It was a metastasizing crisis, a state of total war. And this is where the scale of the tragedy truly becomes apparent. The war wasn't just fought between Taiping and Qing loyalist armies. It was a chaotic melee involving regional militias, opportunistic warlords, and eventually, Western powers. The fighting raged across China's most fertile rice-growing regions. Cities changed hands repeatedly, each conquest followed by massacres. Sieges led to mass starvation. The social order completely collapsed. One Western observer described the countryside as a howling wilderness. The death toll wasn't just from battle. It was from famine, from disease, from the sheer breakdown of civilization. 30 million. You have to sit with that for a moment. It's a number that numbs the mind. It represents a level of suffering that is almost beyond narrative. The end came, ironically, with the help of the very foreign demons the Taiping had originally opposed. Western powers, initially intrigued by the Taiping's Christian flavor, eventually sided with the Qing. The Taiping were too unstable, too disruptive to trade. A brilliant, ruthless Qing general named Zheng Guofan built a formidable regional army, and with Western advisors and weapons, he began to slowly strangle the Heavenly Kingdom. The final siege of Nanjing in 1864 was brutal. Xiuquan, by then sick and possibly poisoned, died just before the city fell. His body was later exhumed, shot out of a cannon, and his ashes scattered to the winds to prevent any veneration. The remaining Taiping leaders were executed. The Heavenly Kingdom was erased with extreme prejudice. So what are we left with? A failed revolution? A pointless slaughter? I don't think history is ever that simple. Sitting here, thinking about it from my perspective as an engineer and an entrepreneur, I see patterns. I see the explosive power of a narrative, especially one that combines personal grievance, social justice, and divine purpose. Hong's story is a terrifying lesson in what happens when a compelling vision isn't matched by sustainable governance. When charisma has no check on its power. The Taiping promised heaven, but they created a hell on earth. But they also shook the foundations of an ancient empire. The Qing Dynasty never recovered. The rebellion forced it to rely on regional Chinese armies, weakening central control forever. It exposed the dynasty's fragility and arguably set in motion the chain of events that would lead to its collapse in 1911 and the eventual rise of modern China. The Taiping's radical ideas about land and gender equality, though unrealized, became ghosts that would haunt future revolutionaries. The Taiping Rebellion is a flashpoint of almost mythical proportions. It's a story of a failed exam, a fever dream, and a paradise that became a graveyard. It reminds us that the lines between prophet and tyrant, between liberation and catastrophe, are often terrifyingly thin. It forces us to look at the immense, human cost of grand ideological transformations, a cost measured not in territory gained, but in millions of individual lives, stories, and futures extinguished. Thanks for listening to this episode of Flashpoints. If this story of history's hidden turning points resonates with you, please share the podcast with someone who'd appreciate it. For more deep dives into the wars that shaped our world, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. This is Ibnul J. Farabi for Light Knot Studios. Visit us at lightknotstudios.com. Until next time, take care.